Hi, how are you?
Doing great. So good to see you again.
It's great to see you again. I got dressed up for you.
No, did you? I
Yeah,
did my hair for you, so I figured.
I can tell.
Yeah.
My husband just shaved his head, so
How's it looking?
I I'm getting used to it. He likes to do it every now and then. I think actually it's good. It's good for it, the hair comes back, a little darker and
Nice. So
thicker.
he has a choice still. I don't have a choice anymore. Like,
Yeah, but I think that he initially did it. He initially had my son shave his head during quarantine,
mm,
and that was a little scary. But I think that was mostly because he was concerned that he wasn't going to have a choice, and he wanted to see what that was going to look like.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But yeah, he looks great regardless, because I know he's going to watch this eventually.
Right.
You look
For the
beautiful
record.
either way, handsome
Yes.
either way.
Nice. Check.
Yes.
Very good. So see your people just rolling in the chat. Hi to everyone and all your friends and fans cheering you on here.
Oh, thank you.
Nice. I love your news page, open
Thank you
access
so
Pilates.
much.
I was just like going through and I'm like, oh, I want to try that. Oh, I want to try that. Oh, I want to make my own library of exercises based off of it. It looks so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, that's basically what I think of it as. It's a library of the archival work,
Hmm.
and I think we all have access to it, and we all should.
Yep.
So that's what it is. It's actually so my goal isn't to be the source, right? I
Yes.
don't want to. Let's put it this way. I look at it like this. Answers fill us, questions open us.
Mm.
So, open access Pilates archives, in my opinion, I wanted not to answer everybody's questions because then it's done.
Yes.
I want the learning to continue. So, my goal is to create bigger questions. So, you
Yes.
look at it, and for example, um, Victoria Batha, she did this post earlier this week, which has since been removed. And it started out really beautifully, and she had posted some images of Joe and Anita, who was from Explore Pilates, who was on your program yesterday, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
So she had, we're looking at a bunch of different transitions.
Hmm.
And Joe was crossing his legs to sit down on the mat. And you know how you can look at something but not really see it?
Yes.
So, of course, I had seen this image of Joe going to sit down on the mat and, countless times. And Anita brought up, well, Christina, why do you think he does it so hunched over as opposed to how we do it nowadays with such an
Yes.
erect posture?
Yes.
And I can only guess that that was, at least from my mentor, Romana Krizanovska, with ballet training, that maybe, at least from my training with her, we did it that way because having more erect posture is the goal. And that
Yes.
was probably something that she might have contributed to it, at least
Yeah.
in my training, because that's all I know.
Yes.
But the interesting thing about it was that the fact that she brought that up raised some questions for me, like, but why did he show it that
Hmm.
way? And
Yes.
he was always talking about this, erect spine, but he's showing it so rounded over. So cut to yesterday then. I'm teaching one of my clients on Zoom, and getting to the floor is always a little tricky for him because his big toe joints are really, really stiff. So it's
Okay.
it's hard. He'll tend to roll out at the last minute. His knee will go out of his frame, and he'll plop down at the very last second. So I said to him, I said, listen, let's just try something different today. I want to try this out. What if you were to get to the floor completely rounded over? Don't worry about keeping your sternum open, your chest
Hmm.
lifted,
Hmm.
but just round over and take a seat. It was totally different. It worked perfectly
Mm.
for him, for his body. And
Yes.
I never would have had that opportunity to give him that advice had Victoria not posted that, had Anita not questioned it and brought it up and made me
Hmm.
think about it and not just take for granted, yeah, he's crossing his arms and his feet and he's taking a seat.
Yes.
So unfortunately, it was taken down. And if you want to learn more about that, go to Victoria's stories. There's a lot to see there. But my point is, we were having such a pleasant, innocent discussion about something that we love. And I also had
Christina, I'm doing my
a
best to not ask 19 questions off the bat.
I'm trying my best to be classy, okay? All right, so sometimes it's hard.
Yes.
But
I'm like sitting on my hands, like metaphorically right now. Go on. Yes.
okay. So then I had same weeks, this week as well. I Kathy Ross Nash, she actually is kind of a neighbor of mine.
Oh, cool.
When she's not in New Jersey, she's in Bradenton, Florida, which is about 20 minutes away from where I am in Sarasota.
Hmm.
And so she had, uh, let's just say, something in a similar vein happen. Unkind comment made in her direction, and we were talking, we were sending messages privately, and she said something to me. She was definitely taking the higher road, and she said,
Yes.
just remember, don't let anyone steal your joy. And I said,
Yes.
Kathy, I have a book of quotes, and that was like my most recent quote that I put in my book.
Mm.
And it really helped me get through what was a very difficult start to my year, but which I now realize has become one of the best, most transformative years in my 31 years of doing Pilates, 21 years of teaching it. And had I
Wow.
not gone through that experience, I wouldn't have found this insane amount of joy in the work yet again. And
Yes.
open access is doing that for me. And so it was really nice to also hear her remind me of that, because we do have to
Yes.
be reminded. We can write it in a book,
Absolutely.
but we can
It's
forget.
affirming, right? It's an affirmation of where we are and what we're supposed to be doing. And it
Yeah.
just, if you caught any of the conversation yesterday was special for me. And I was talking with my wife about it yesterday, how it's still like, I came off my core conversations yesterday, the chat, and I basically just went outside and just sat on the curb with my tea and just kind of reflected on. I had four men, and one was an artist, the other was a basketball coach, and the other one is Jason Williams, as you may know, Frankie Fitness. Right? He's a
Yes.
so Pilates guy, but then also has so the sense of having areas of passion and just doing you
Yeah.
was so powerful. And like, and what you said, like, you find joy and there's some pushback and there's some things that we get through when we land at this place of doing what brings us joy.
Right.
And hearing them talk about it yesterday, and and hearing you say it in a different way, but it's still having the same underlying message of just moving to this place of like not letting anyone steal your joy, doing things in
Right.
spite of, giving yourself expression instead of trying to
Freedom.
prove yourself. You're expressing yourself has been like a phrase that since last Friday has been coming up a lot. And I'm seeing it even
Yeah.
in what you're saying right now. Such good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really grateful, and I mentioned it to you today in a little DM. I
Hmm.
shared an image with you that I have since archived from my main Godard Pilates page. Someday I'll bring it back.
Okay.
But I was reading this book last night before going to sleep, and I learned about mandalas. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce the word. And I was learning about what they are, and I realized that this artwork that I created with my daughter, who's now 13, at the beginning of this year, it's a mandala. And a mandala, I learned, is basically a symbol and a manifestation of creation.
Mm.
And then I go back to 9 months ago when we were talking, and we were talking about, okay, I've written 6 books. I feel transformed, especially by the manual I wrote, Pilates for Children. It was unprecedented territory. It was daunting. It was intimidating, but I did it, and I
Yes.
feel really good about it. But what do I do now?
Mm.
And so and then I realized I don't have to do anything. Let me just be, and let me just
Yes.
enjoy the moment.
Yes.
I don't have to keep searching and looking.
I
It will
remember
find
that.
me, right?
Yes. Yes.
So then I I'll cut to just the end of the story. I ended up making this beautiful image with my daughter. And the center of the image is the profile pic for open access, me curled in a little ball. And it symbolized a lot for me. It was a difficult start of the year, right? I
Mm,
believe in good faith that I was being given baseless threats, harassment, intimidation. And I didn't have the freedom to fight back, and I couldn't. I have a
yeah,
family. Let's just put it that way.
yeah,
So I created this image with my daughter. In a way, I didn't believe even what I was writing. Around that curled ball position, I wrote "Become the change" in a circle. And then we took the image that we see, double leg stretch in Return to Life with the arms glued to the sides. Can you still hear me?
yes, yep,
Okay. And my daughter created this beautiful watercolor of butterfly wings, and you can see that image in my profile pic for Guitar Pilates. But we designed it in a way that it was circular, and the butterflies, there are four of them that go around the curled position, the cocoon, if you will.
mm,
And it looked, and then around that it said "Love all around," which is you know, a nod to my teacher Romana. That's her kind of her tag phrase, "Love all
yes,
around." So when you look at it, it looks like a kaleidoscope. The colors are really beautiful. My daughter picked the colors, and so I'm reading about this mandala yesterday, and I realized, and it said sometimes when you create your mandala, you don't realize why your soul chose those words, why your soul chose those images, why it chose those colors. And
mm,
now, literally, last night, I realized, and it literally gives me chills just now saying it, that that image, which I did take down of my own will to avoid entanglements, but I had every right, I believe, to show. I realized that looking at that image, which I had as wallpaper on my cell phone for months,
yes,
and looking at it elsewhere in my home now, I have looked at that image every single day since, and I didn't realize that that image helped me create open access Pilates archives,
yeah,
because open access Pilates archives is the transformation that came from a very difficult situation. And let's just say this: I've never let go of anything, and anything I've ever let go of at this point has my claw marks on it. I
mm,
tried not to let go of it. Um, and in a way, I didn't, because if I hadn't gone through that, we wouldn't have open access Pilates archives. We wouldn't have bigger questions being asked about the method.
yes,
And we wouldn't have the opportunity to discover more. I'm not creating this account because I know all of the answers. I'm like everybody else who has a passion for the work. I want to know more.
yes,
And I want to meet, and I've already met so many people with good character and with integrity who have original equipment. And I'm a vintage lover. And I
mm,
oh and I have been for a very long time. And that includes the Pilates equipment. And I want to know, well, why did Corolla's reformer have that center pole and no guide wheels, but the carriage was elevated? And I've shared, Ken Endelman has William Herman's Divana apparatus,
mm,
and I've met so many people, amazing people, and that's the thing. I have chosen that my account will
yeah,
feature the work, because
mhm,
I thought to myself, well, if I believe I'm getting threatened for sharing archival images,
yes,
what can I do?
right,
Well, what I've always had on my side is I can do the work.
mm,
And I am extremely detail oriented,
yes,
and I have my experience with Romana.
right,
So I decided, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Of course, the first post in this account is very telling. And I just took it from there. And this has been the best continuing education of my life. And I
wow.
realized that my mentor is not someone else, it's myself.
For those who are in the chat and are like, what happened? What happened? What happened? Can you give like a high level kind of backstory a little bit to what happened? Because I'm hearing
It's going to
a
be
bit of,
hard, but I think
yeah.
I can share this
Just to
because
kind of paint a picture. I mean, not everyone
yeah,
is in the Pilates world too who watches or maybe watches
yeah.
later. So just to kind of give a high level explanation of,
Okay. Let me start by giving you a quote that my daughter told me this morning that I thought could not be more perfect for what's going on these days. Mark Twain.
okay.
History doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes.
Hmm.
Okay? So let's think about more recent Pilates history. Let's, newer teachers, educate yourselves about what happened in the late 90s and 2000s. And you can do that. You can go to Pilates anytime and you can watch interviews by Gordon Troy and Ken Endelman and Joan Brabart, and you can learn about what happened. Okay?
Okay.
So now we're getting into some rhyming.
Hmm.
And I have always loved, because I consider myself an artist, I've always loved this 3-page pamphlet called Around the Clock and Back in 1 Minute that Joseph Pilates created in 1943.
Okay.
And so, and I'm also a vintage lover. And there's this, I'm wearing a 1950s dress for you today, Martin. And I
Wow.
collect, I collect vintage. And so in this image, this beautiful image, she's wearing this vintage bathing suit, which was, current at the time. And I thought, well, I've got connections in the vintage clothing world. I'm going to put my feelers out to try to find this bathing suit. And I did. I found
Hmm.
it in my favorite color of light blue. And I thought, this is just going to be my fun passion project. I'm just going to try to recreate this around the clock image.
Yes.
And so, and it was a lot of work. It's really just 2 images. Romana taught me the exercise. You basically do the double leg stretch. And every time you pull the knees in, you swivel to the next hour of the clock.
Yes.
But
I've tried
yet,
that.
when you look at the description in the pamphlet, it's slightly different than that. You extend your legs to every other hour of the clock, and you give your body a little massage in the ball position in the transition between those 2 hours.
Okay.
So that was, again, another example of you looking at something, but you don't really see it. And so when that was finally brought to my attention and I realized, oh, and then, Tone and Michael from, they used to be at 2121 Broadway. They did a nice Pilates Anytime video talking about, you can find it on Pilates Anytime, talking about this exercise in the pamphlets and showing how to do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, where was I? Why is it taking me so many years to realize this was a different way of doing it?
Yes.
And a wonderful way, because you massage your back and you really learn about your imbalances, right? You're going clockwise and then counterclockwise, and it never, I don't care who you are, it never feels the same in both directions. So
Yeah.
you learn about yourself. It's a great exercise. And it's just a really wonderful ad. It's got the Art Deco feel, and it's beautiful in every way.
Yes.
So in all of my research, we know that Joseph Pilates, he documented his work a lot, and he generally did not protect it. So I believe that Around the Clock was written with a copyright of 1943, but it was never officially registered within those first
Hmm.
5 years, and it was never renewed in the 60s.
So it's
And
public
he,
domain.
hello, yeah. And so it was distributed. I mean, Deborah Lesson has a pamphlet that she received from her teacher, Carola Trier, who was Joe's student. And I know multiple people who have the original pamphlet. So so at the beginning of the year, I had mentioned to some of my friends, I'm really excited. I'm going to do some things with this image. I'm going to do some original art with it and maybe recreate it. And someone said to me, so and so believes that this is theirs. And I said, but I don't understand. It just doesn't add up. And I reached out to the person who works with that gentleman,
Hmm.
and she said, it's always good just to go straight to this person and ask. And I did, and I was told I couldn't use it. And then I was told, and as we got further into it, I was told that the other images, the more creative images I made with it, that I would have to enter into a license agreement for it.
Mm. Yeah.
And I don't want to infringe on any copyright, but I do believe in good faith that this image is public domain. And yet, a few weeks into it, an application was filed for a trademark of the image. It hasn't gone through yet. You can go to Victoria's stories at the Pilates Snob account, and you might still see that up there.
Yeah.
And so it was really hard for me because let's just say this. My grandmother, who was a writer, who a lover of words, she spoke many languages. She was Brazilian and she spoke English fluently, which was very unusual for her
Yes.
generation. She taught me that there is a very important word in no matter what language it is. And that word, the most important word there is in the world, is justice. And I felt that this was very unjust. And I tried to get myself to think, okay, well, you know what? Maybe peace is a better word. I
Okay.
don't want to surround myself with toxic energy. And I want to be able to enjoy. I have a lot in my life. I want to enjoy my life and enjoy my
Mm,
teaching. And I don't want it to, that toxic energy to infiltrate my love and steal my joy of the work.
right.
And but it was hard because if you don't have justice, how can you have peace? And that was what I was battling with. And you can see
Yes.
this a lot in the world. This is just a little microcosm of what's going on in the world. And that's what
Absolutely.
I felt that now I realize it's a mandala, but that's what I realized, that become the change, love all around. At the time I made it, to be honest, it was tongue in cheek. I didn't believe there was love all around. I
Yeah.
felt abandoned. I felt disillusioned. I felt frustrated.
Of course.
But yet, through this experience, I have met so many people in the broader Pilates community that
Yes.
have really opened up my eyes and opened up my world. And it has been
Yes. Beautiful.
spectacular.
Absolutely.
You
Such
know,
a joy.
I was fed a narrative because I was certified in 2000 by Romana. And I wouldn't take it back for the world. And she is my mentor and always will be. And I hear her words in my head every day.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were fed a narrative that unless we were trained by her, it wasn't Pilates.
That's the root.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then come a year into my teaching as a new teacher, before the internet was really a big thing, in walks a student who trained with Joe's student, Kathy Grants. I said,
Hmm.
wait a minute. Are you telling me that there are other people who train with Joe who also teach?
Right.
I was shocked. And from that moment on, I wanted to learn more. Oh, and I've talked about my student Clara many times. Um, and then she also lives part-time in Paris, and she worked with a man named Jerome Andrews, who
Hmm.
was Joe's student and close friend. And Clara said Joe wanted him to take over. I mean, we hear this about a lot of people. People say that
Right.
about Eve Gentry, and we hear
Yes, for
that about a
sure.
lot. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So I was fascinated, and so Joe gave Jerome Andrews blueprints to the reformer and the chair, and he built them there in Paris. And my student inherited them and got the weighted shoes, which I've also recreated here in my studio with vintage metal plates and in my
Yes.
husband's old canvas ballet slippers because they were too big to fit into mine. And so I just see how all of these little things brought me to where I am today. But
Of
yeah,
course.
21 years into teaching, and now it's like, aha, I
That that
get
resonates with
it.
me in so many ways coming from these conversations that I have with people every day. You start to think that there is one way, one person, one gatekeeper, one authority. And you
Yeah.
think, well, there maybe there's one or two, or maybe there's a few more. And then I meet someone from Turkey. And then I meet someone from Ireland. And then I meet
Mm-hmm.
someone from Australia. And I meet someone in Germany. And they're like, I was taught by this person. I was taught by this person. And I was taught by this person. And you realize that these people, and we don't have to name names, but
Mm-hmm.
they're on the same level as these people.
Yeah,
So they are equally as qualified to teach as this person
absolutely.
over here who has a book
Maybe
and
a
a
bigger media
conference
presence
and a
too.
bigger media presence. And
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, we talk about there's a phrase like being ghetto fabulous. In a certain arena, everyone knows you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other people that they may not have as many eyeballs on them, but they're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And they have their own life experience because of the people that they've taught, and they've been, and so those things land us at a place where we have so many potential teachers and so many people to learn from, and so many other ways to have access to this knowledge. And um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, Michael, I think he's still watching.
Yes, yeah.
He had mentioned to me earlier, he said, you can own a Picasso painting, but it doesn't mean you have the rights to Picasso's work.
Mm, right.
I agree.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
some great comments here. So Alicia's here. So maybe the entire Pilates world should work together to hashtag free the archives.
maybe.
Maybe. I've
Doesn't sound
had,
like a bad idea.
I know, I've had quote unquote that guy slash quote unquote some guy on here as Michael. Ken Endelman refers to him as some guy and that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here's just two comments here. One from Late Moose Pilates. I bought the original Around the Clock pamphlet over 15 years ago at the PMA. Proud to own and display. So if I post it, I'll get sued? Really? This is the
Well,
epitome
that's the
of
thing.
selflessness as an educator, right?
That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will get harassed and others will not.
Yep.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. I will tell you that I take artwork off of my walls for every single video shoot I do for Open Access Pilates Archives.
Really?
I have, and eventually I'm probably going to have about 40 pieces of original artwork in my studio. But there are just a couple that I take down because I don't want to deal with that toxic energy. And I'm not admitting any guilt because I believe in good faith. I have every right to display it. I have a home-based studio. It's in my home.
Yep.
And even if it were commercial space, I do believe that I have a right to display it based on
Yeah.
what I said earlier.
Right.
But I don't want to deal with that.
No.
I have two beautiful children. I have 7 pets that keep me really busy. I have a wonderful husband, mom, sister, 3 nephews. I love what I do. I want to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And I choose not to get entangled. I felt in the beginning of the year like I was stuck in a spider web.
I can imagine that sense of being stuck because you authentically want to help and to share your
Yes.
joy, and then someone has you under thumb, and not necessarily the fight with that person as much as the fact that it's hindering you from being able to freely share over here, knowing that there's going to be someone in your ear on this side. There's
Yes.
going to be grief coming from somewhere else, and that's a
Right.
really frustrating place to live.
Yeah. And I think the problem is this is a hard issue for people to understand because if you post something and someone says to you, that belongs to me, you need to take it down, you assume that they're telling you the truth. And
Right.
of course, you're going to just take it
Take
down.
it down. Right.
But then if you step back a moment and you actually look at, well, why? And if you do like what I did and you ask,
Hmm.
can you provide me proof?
Hmm.
Can you show me? That's all I need. I don't
Yeah.
want to be involved in copyright infringement. I would just like to be given proof. And when that's not given, and when the attention is diverted to like a photo of me at Romana's granddaughter's studio in Fort Lauderdale, where I'm taking a picture with one of my teachers, and on the wall in the background of her studio, there are some pictures of Joe, and then that gets used as threats towards me. Well, you did that. You posted that photo. I mean, they're blurry photos in the background of me with my teacher. So this is what I was dealing with, and that's why it felt so unjust. That's
Absolutely.
why I took a step back and I removed myself from social media. I needed to get away from the noise. I needed to figure out what my next step would be, because at that
Yes.
point, my joy was taken away from me, and I was
Right.
aggravated and frustrated, and I know that a lot of people don't want to deal with toxic energy, and their first inclination is, well, just ignore it, just block and
Yes.
move on with your life.
Right.
But then it's going to happen to the next person, and what about the person after that? And when is it going to be enough?
Yes. Right.
Like I said, history, I used to say history repeats itself, but after what my daughter brought up this morning with Mark Twain's quote, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And I think that is exactly what we're seeing here.
Mm, right. Wow. Wow. Wow.
It's
Wow.
kind of
Alicia's,
heavy.
yeah, that's fine. We go where we need to go.
Mhm.
Real Pilates says, if you're accused by IG and the post is removed, you don't just click OK, request a review.
Yes.
And the
Yeah, and I
situation says,
didn't
yeah.
know that. I
Mm,
didn't know that. So by the time I learned that, I it was too late. There was a certain window where I could have done that. Um, yeah. I mean, I could go on. There's more, but
yes.
maybe we'll just leave it at that.
Yes. Explore Pilates. Thanks for joining me third day in a row. I hadn't used one of these days. That's been fun. That was a great chat too. Just talking with her. There's something to
Yeah,
be
I watched
said.
that.
Yeah, there's something to be said for. Um, I just want to think about moving from a place of joy, having the confidence to do things that bring you joy. So that's why this really. I feel like I'm still hanging on this because when people try and steal your joy, I mean, it sounds like bullying. It sounds like there's a targeting that's happening there. I know
You
that you're
said
very
it, not me.
intentional. You're intentional to not say it, but I'm going to say it. That sounds like bullying. And there's an example, well, it's not an example of bullying, but where you can see where certain people are getting targeted and others aren't. And that's happened to me on
Yes.
the other side, actually, where there was something that's happening, and they're like, "Did this happen to you?" And I was like, "No, actually, I was fine." And then someone else was like, "Well, that happened to me. Why did that not happen to you?" Right? So, and then we get into
Mhm.
the favoritism or the targeting or the bullying, and all these things get ugly. And people, this is the ugly side of Pilates, right? Like
Yeah.
when we talk about the warm and fuzzy and helping people and all these different things and
Hmm.
growing our business, all that stuff is wonderful, but this also happens.
This exists, and if we keep
This
turning the other cheek,
exists.
it's just going to continue to grow because, in my opinion, it's not just one person. I think someone else is being groomed to take over. So that's all I'm going to say about that as well.
Mm, yes. Um, there's two comments here. Michael Brown, I got to write something down before I get to these two comments. So, Michael Brown's comment: I'm convinced that Victoria's takedown request was so quick with my challenging ownership in the comment. So challenging ownership. And then Goring Mojo, Sunny's comment: so do you double dog dare me to use my original logo again?
Okay, so for Sunny, Sunny was one of the people that I reached out to
Mm,
because she had an image that she worked with a graphic designer that was also a derivative of the around the clock image for Going More
okay.
Joe. And we had a Zoom conference call. The minute that this one teacher, I was teaching her on Zoom, and at the end of the lesson, I brought this up. We were talking about what's my next thing. And I brought up my project, and she said, well, be careful and you may want to reach out to other people, and Sunny was one of the names brought up, and that very night we had a Zoom conference, and yeah, so that happened to her.
Right.
And the frustrating thing is that, okay, I'm just going to go with this movie that I saw.
Okay.
I saw this movie, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name of it, and it was difficult subject matter about um, it was very cleverly done, and it was about a woman whose best friend had been raped in college, and she eventually committed suicide. And in this movie, the main character, she's seeking revenge for her best friend, and so she's going back. I mean, it's a really intense movie, but very well done. And there was a moment in the movie where the main character went to visit the home of the lawyer who was representing the man who raped her best friend.
Okay.
And this lawyer sat there on the couch and he was explaining how we basically have people in our law offices who will scan women's accounts and they'll say, well, look at this risque photo and look at this and look at this, and they
Mm,
try to paint a picture, right?
right.
And I thought, oh my God, I know I wasn't in this exact situation, but I feel like I was stripped emotionally. And
Yes.
so I had somebody going through my account and grasping at straws. I mean, if you have to go to a picture of me in Fort Lauderdale
Mm,
and with a blurry picture in the background saying, we're going to use this against you if you don't take this down.
yes.
Or if I have a photo that I used, um, an archival photo of Joe that he published
Yes.
for the junior reformer, and it's with a kid, and I think, oh, that's the perfect photo I'll use to promote my benefit class for pediatric cancer research, and
Mm,
that gets removed from
yikes.
Instagram.
Right.
And I'm going to hold it together, but that is a student and a friend
Heartbreaking.
of mine who died at 9 years of age, who I knew since he was in my friend's womb.
Yes.
It's despicable.
Absolutely despicable.
And it was unjust because he published the photo. Joe published it in his advertisement, and you can go to the New York Public Library and you can see it. You can see it. I can find the collection, France. I'll find it for it. I can find the information for whoever wants. But it was published by Joe in an advertisement. And I wasn't making any money, and I haven't made any money from any of those images, and I really didn't want to. I had thought maybe I could use my recreation and put it on T-shirts or something like that.
Mm,
And when I actually looked at it, I am not that type of, it's just too hard to produce merchandise for me. I've got too
yes.
much going on. I want to teach, I want to learn, I want to create art, but I don't have that desire to create merchandise. I have my books, which is giving information, and that's my artwork that I sell.
Hmm.
But outside of that, I really, that wasn't ever the thing. It was just about sharing what I created with my daughter with the
With the
rest of the
world.
Pilates community.
Yes.
So I think I've divulged way more than I expected to in this conversation. And I said the word I believe multiple times, so I believe that I am safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't use anything derogatory. I just am speaking my mind, and I live in the United States, and last I heard, we're supposed to have freedom of speech.
Mm.
I don't really believe we do. And I feel like the legal system lets us down a lot. But I'm hoping that's going to change. Should we talk about open access Pilates archives?
Yes.
Okay.
The word that I wrote down before you get to that, or as we get into our transition, is the word movement. And I was reading a book that I got from one of my colleagues here for Christmas called Tribe, and he talked about movements.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it describes the fact that when you have a movement, there's passion, there's persistence that just came up. And that is run by a collective, a community. So it's not one person holding all the cards, being the
Right.
authority and lording it over. So a movement comes when people start to, it gathers momentum, it, and then everyone collectively shares, and there's this collective interest, there's a collaboration, and all these beautiful things happen. That's happened now a year into Core Conversations, where I'm asking people to come on, and people like yourself 9 months ago show up. We meet, we hear great stories of the children you work with, your books and what you're doing. And then from there, the people that are in the chat who follow you now follow me. And then they show up
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow and then they say, hey, that was a great conversation with Christina. And I say, I would love to have you on too. And they say yes, and they come on. That's a movement. We've created a
Yes.
movement. No one owns this. I don't own Core Conversations. We collectively have grown this.
I love that.
And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that that's the way that the whole Pilates community is moving, where now these conversations are unearthing the fact that there are so many people out there in this whole wide world who are authorities on movements, who are
Yes.
passionate about people, who are making a change in people's lives, who are heroes all over the earth.
Right.
So it's not one person who was raised in New York City who has all of the cards. Everyone has the
Right.
cards now because it's a movement, it's collective. So that, from my perspective, is what open access Pilates is. Whereas now, okay, it's you taking pictures and you going from archives. I'm sure that that's going to start a snowball of other people saying, hey, I'm in Turkey and I've worked with Joseph Pilates and no one's ever asked me, but here are some of my pictures. Like
Mm-hmm.
that can come out as we start
Yeah.
this movement as well.
Yeah. And open access Pilates is not, I don't owe that to anybody who claims to own photos. I I've done this. I've studied my notes with Romana. I have been certified by her and trained with her. She taught a lot of archival work, and Joe documented it, so that backs it up. I don't owe this to anybody, as it
That's
was
not
implied to me
secondhand.
earlier this week.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I imagine that if you were to have gone into Joe's studio, maybe Joe as a teacher wouldn't have been the right fit for you. Maybe it was Clara Pilates. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
was Hannah. You know,
Right.
maybe it was someone else. So even, Joe created this work, but there were other people who worked alongside him who also influenced what he did.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is even Joe isn't the single most owner of the work, right? Because he was, and I did a whole thing. I think it was in December 2020, around that time, on my main Pilates page, Guitar Pilates, where I compared a lot of Martha Graham's technique to a lot of the physical culture and movement, standing exercises and floor exercises that Joe did. And the similarities are uncanny. I mean, they were two geniuses, but who's to say they didn't influence each other? Yeah, maybe they didn't like each other, but they definitely influenced each other. I mean,
Absolutely.
I show side by side the movements that Joe did and the movements
Mm-hmm.
that Martha taught, and you can't. There's no denying.
Right.
There's no denying it. So even when Joe was doing it, it was based out of a collective movement in a way too.
Well said.
Yeah.
So what is your vision for open access Pilates now? Like, where do we go from here with it?
Well, I'm not sure, and I'm not going to pressure myself to figure out an
Yeah.
end goal
No,
because
right.
I think my last conversation with you helped me realize that I don't have to have a plan. It will come to
Absolutely.
me.
Yes.
But what I do see happening is as I get in touch with people like Gillian Hessel and Ken Endelman and Troy McCarty and countless other people who have original equipment, I do see myself wanting to eventually be able to travel and to
Mm-hmm.
go to these people and to see the equipment and maybe do some interviews in person, like be with this person and learn from
Yes.
this person and feel this equipment, whether or not I'm allowed to use it, but just to see it in
It's
person
just
would
to
be
touch it,
such
right?
just a touch, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be wonderful. So, it's not easy for me to travel with having a lot of commitments with my family, but I do see that happening in the future. That's something that I would really
Mm-hmm.
love. And, I will do this for as long as I can. There's lots of material. It's keeping me in good shape and it's keeping my
No
mind
doubt.
sharp.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to keep going as long as I can with this. And I think that, I don't care if I have a huge following or not. I just
Mm-hmm.
want people who do follow to realize why this is an important account
Yes.
and why, this is for everybody. And
Yes.
this is the only way that I'm able to share it without getting entangled in things that I
Yes.
believe are unjust.
Absolutely. So just let's talk like the nuts and bolts of social media and business for a second. If
Mm-hmm.
I was to hypothetically look at one of your posts and let's say a standing arm springs exercise, and I was to do it and post a video of it, are there certain things that you'd like me to like? Because I would do it with the intent of saying this is where I got it from. Follow her; she's doing great work. Is there
I
anything
think
like?
that's great. I think
Okay.
I think it's really respectful to if you see it on open access, and you by all means have every right, because it's not my work, it's Joe's work.
Mhm.
You have every right to share the video, but it's always wonderful to have a little bit of like a, and by the way, this is
Yes.
where I saw it. That's great. I think
Okay.
that's really nice.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
here's a way to do it, just to standardize it for a moment. Put your handle so that at Open Access Pilates Archives.
Archives. Hmm.
You and any hashtags that you want to see kind of recycling through it, because I saw you have like quite a few of them there. Is there any fun ones
Yeah,
you want to keep up
I've
there?
been using Share the Work.
Share the work.
I know that this week the Free the Archives has come about, so
Okay.
could be good.
Okay.
But
I'm writing
yeah,
these down.
and Joseph Pilates is a good one. Pilates Archives, Archival Pilates, Original Pilates. All of that is good, but sharing the work. Open Access Pilates Archives is also my handle, but it's also a hashtag that I use as well.
I'm writing these down.
Okay.
Open archive, open
Oh,
access. Sorry,
Open
what was that?
Access Pilates Archives, Share the Work, Free the Archives, Pilates Archives and Archival Pilates, and Original Pilates.
I feel like I'm writing on a chalkboard right now, Christina. Like I just like Archives. There you go. OAS. Bam. Yes. The Yeah, so that's Sherry said. Ramona taught us to credit the work, respect our industry is vital. Absolutely, and that's why I'm talking about this to Alicia. Like the sense of archiving it, credit, like give people credit while where it's due. In the sense
Yeah,
of if you put it out, repost it. I do it with people all the time just for fun, and I'll always try and credit them. But then it just gets some momentum, gets people excited about it. So if
yeah.
they see me do it, much like, okay, a little side story from yesterday. The gentleman that was on Trey Arts, and I was saying I'm gonna make a little soundbite from it. He was talking about his art shows, and we've had my wife used to be a general manager for a big box gym, and they'd have these art people come in for art night, and you get your wine, and then you paint like a Monet painting or whatever it is, and it's fine. This guy is painting like rap artists and Michael Jordan and all these things, and
Uh-huh.
he would paint it, and then everybody, that's an amazing painting. How'd you do that? And he said, well, let's do a paint night. And then he would have people come to his studio. He took a big dive and got a studio, and then he would do like a walkthrough of making his paintings. And
Hmm.
then we're doing like a Kawhi Leonard painting or Buju Banton, who's a reggae artist, and all these different things. But he's a black gentleman. He's in good shape. He likes his music and all these different things. And I went, one, because the painting is good, and two, because he looked like me.
Hmm.
It wasn't, some a white older lady,
Yeah.
painting. So I saw myself in the movement of art, and that's another thing that appealed to me. So the more that people see your work and then say, hey, open access is doing it, here's my
And
rendition
see
of,
other bodies doing it.
and
Right.
seeing, that's the longest way of saying it, let's see other bodies doing it and then give
Yes.
her the credit for it.
Yeah,
That's the
that's awesome.
movement.
That's a great movement. I think we came up with a good idea. You did.
We did.
Yeah.
There's a couple more comments here. Before we're done, wow, 55. Crazy. How we're done
I
already.
can't see the comments, so if you read them,
Sure.
I don't
So
know why
love
mine are frozen.
love movement Pilates says, before we're done, can we see your beautiful dress?
Oh, I don't know. Is that enough? I'm attached. It's like a
Oh
leash.
yes, she's anchored right now, so no, maybe after. Um, Thank you, Pilates, Hadi IG, Tammy, hello. Crest Central Pilates, how's it going, everybody? Um, so Love Movement Pilates was saying, I support you. Thank you for this conversation. Joel
Thank you.
Crosby saying, I love your work.
Thank you.
A comment that he made earlier too, when you're talking about the Martha Graham
Uh-huh.
piece, was good movement of the human body will always look similar at the core level.
Yeah, when we talked 9 months ago, You asked me a question about is Pilates a performance? And I was really hesitant to, I didn't want to agree with that in the beginning because there's this rehabilitative aspect of Pilates. And I want Pilates to be accessible to everybody. And I don't, even though I was a dancer, I don't want people to feel that they have to be a dancer to do good Pilates. So I
Right.
didn't want to say that it can be a performance. But then you kind of got me to where I admitted it because it's for my body, it can feel that way
Hmm.
because Romana would always say, Pilates is poetry in motion. And
Interesting.
it was what was so wonderful about working with Romana when I transitioned out of ballet to Pilates was that it gave me the same feeling I had when I
Yes,
was
I've heard
dancing.
that.
And
Yes.
I, how they have that saying, an athlete dies two deaths. Well, it's the same with the
Yes.
dancer. We're athletes
Yes.
too. We're artistic
Hmm.
athletes. And so you mourn the loss of something you've done, like for me, from the age of 7. And then it's like, well, how am I, like, I can't sit at a desk for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
I spent my life moving and studying the way I move and trying to perfect it and being creative. And how can I find that joy for my life, even though my
Mm.
body won't obey my
Yeah.
will anymore? And
Right.
so Pilates was that key for me to still have joy of movement in my life
Yes.
while still honoring my body. So
Yes.
yeah, you're going to see some exercises on open access that are really crazy and definitely not for everybody.
Hmm. Hmm.
And perhaps Joe or Romana decided not to teach them anymore, but I'm sharing what I believe was documented. And
Yes.
you just, it again, it creates bigger questions. It's not supposed to fill you up with the answers. It's to open you
Yes.
up with the
Open
questions,
up. Yes.
right? So yeah, I think that movement can be done in a way where it does look like poetry in motion.
Hmm.
And I'm about to work with a new student who's an amputee, and I am very excited to work with her
Yes.
because she is going to push me, and
Hmm.
I I think that this is going to make a difference in her life.
Yes.
So I think Pilates can be many things to many different people.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And Michael's comment, Pilates is a workout, not a performance. It should be poetic. It is not a performance. And then Explore Pilates said yes and no. And like that
Yeah, it
conversation can go in
depends on
so
the
many different ways.
person.
Exactly. And I would also say, because I'm always in the practice of challenging and redeeming words that we want to cancel
Hmm.
from our vocabulary, and like
Right.
define performance. Like what does performance even look like?
Right. So that's why when you said, I think that was the word you used 9 months ago. And that's why
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't want to say it's a performance. But I do remember working with one of my Grandmaster teachers, Juanita Lopez, as an apprentice or a newly certified teacher. And I think I was just newly certified and I was taking a private lesson from her, but I've had a bunch of apprentices watching. And she looked at me, she said, just remember, Pilates, this is your performance. And I thought, well,
Mm,
this feels like a performance because I have an audience here and
mhm.
they're looking at me to try to show them of how it can look. And they're hungry to see, to see Pilates done and see lots of
Yes.
different variations of the exercises. So that was the first time it was brought up to me where it could be a performance.
Yes.
But, I teach out of my modest home-based Pilates studio. I don't have an audience. I do
Hmm.
Pilates because it makes me feel good. And when I
Yes.
don't do it, I'm cranky and my body hurts.
Hmm.
So where yes, it could be a performance, I don't do it because of that. I do it because it feeds my soul.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and
Love that.
it's interesting, Joseph Pilates, I started doing all this dry brushing. I featured, all of the stuff he did for the skin in some
Hmm.
earlier posts on open access. And so I've been doing this dry brushing and I have
Yes.
very,
Love that.
very sensitive skin. I took malaria pills in 2004 when I went to the Amazon for my grandmother's 90th birthday. She was actually born in Manaus in the state of Amazon. So we went there for 90th and I was taking malaria pills. And when I got back, I developed the worst case of psoriasis imaginable. Second only
Mm.
to the psoriasis that I developed after the birth of each of my children. And it was like all over my legs and my arms. And so I had to use, like, at that point, I used steroids, creams to take care of it. And then after the birth of my son, I developed it literally from head to toe. And I had to go to
Wow.
a dermatologist and stand in a light box 3 times a week for 5 minutes for 5 months because I was nursing and I didn't want to take any
Of
steroids.
course. Great.
And then I knew it was going to happen after my daughter was born, and I paid out of pocket for her birth, so I didn't have insurance to cover that treatment. So I went a holistic route, which I won't describe here because people will find it gross, but it was free and natural, and it took care of it just as well. But I'm very sensitive. I had a friend from Brazil right before my 40th birthday give me some body bath lotion that she brought from Brazil, and I
Yes.
used it. And then later that day, we went to the opera house to watch the Sarasota Youth Opera, and I started to feel like my hips were hurting a lot
Oh
earlier that
no.
morning, and I went to hang upside down, like they were so painful. And then I was sitting in the theater, and I started to feel like I was coming down with a fever. So we came home, and I was full of chills. So I got in the hot shower, and I put the bath wash on me some more. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and it looked, although I already have had chicken pox, it looked like I had chicken pox all over my legs, and it was inside of my throat. And I couldn't
What?
eat anything for a week. I could only drink water.
Yes.
So so it was really, and it was a type of psoriasis, a pustular
Yes.
psoriasis. But that is what I'm trying to get at, is that why didn't I try this dry brushing earlier? Because when
Right.
Joe talks about clogging your pores and you putting lotion on and it feels like, you're clogging your
Yes.
pores, I
Right.
don't really need to put lotion on to treat this psoriasis. It's an autoimmune disorder, and I don't need to use that anymore because I can do this dry brushing. Like, why didn't I start this earlier? So if it hadn't been for open access and researching all of this, I wouldn't have started this program for myself, which is really
Yes.
making a huge difference in my comfort and in my confidence, because you get
Amazing.
very self conscious when you have it's your skin, it's your biggest
Physical.
organ. I mean,
Right.
it's hard. I remember going to one of our conventions in Fort Lauderdale, and my teacher Rocky was giving me a lesson, and I felt like just very self-conscious about my issues of my skin. And she actually
Mm.
went, and she was also a massage therapist, and she touched my arm, and she said, "So what's going on here?" And I felt like, oh my God, she actually touched me. Like, this isn't putting her off. I make it
Yes.
sound really awful, but it really was something that I was self-conscious about.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things that I miss about teaching on Zoom versus in the studio, is being able to touch our clients.
Yes. And
Because
get
I'll tell you
those.
that that wasn't even an exercise. That was me standing by my reformer talking to my teacher who taught me in my 12-day intensive getting started. She's always been a very special teacher to me. And the fact that she took the time and felt comfortable touching my skin where I felt
Yes.
I looked ugly
Mm.
really meant a lot to me. And I remember that more than probably corrections from, I mean, I write down all my corrections
Powerful.
after lessons, but that
Yeah.
was the most
Nice.
poignant
Nice.
moment for me in that lesson.
Um, we gotta go, but I don't know if everyone's caught that she said that she writes down her corrections after a lesson. Talk about
Every
a
time.
commitment to getting better every time. That's amazing. Amazing.
I've always
This is
done
good.
that. I've done that when I was a ballet student, when I was getting coached privately. I had some amazing teachers and
Yes.
coaches. And that was, we weren't using video cameras as much back
Hmm.
then, the way people do it now, so that you could study what you did. But I wanted to remember, and I tell my
Yes.
students, even when I'm taking a class, even if it's on Zoom and someone says something that really resonated with me, I'm not going to interrupt the flow of the lesson and go write it down, but I try to remind myself, maybe 10 minutes later, or,
Hmm.
20 minutes later, okay, just remember that's something you want to write down afterwards because that really
Yes.
was good. And, and,
Yes.
and then
I've
immediately
seen
after
the
the lesson
notebooks.
is over, I write it down, because
Yes.
how else could I do open access Pilates archives if I didn't have what Romana wrote or
Yes.
told me? I write it
Wow.
down. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying I chose to do this, because I have the ability to do a lot of these things, not everything, but I can do a
Yes.
lot of the things. reasonably well, but I will tell you that every video is usually shot at least 5 times because I will look at it and I'll say, that doesn't look right. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
like that. And so it's really hard. Two videos could have taken an hour.
of
It's
course.
very time consuming. I don't get paid for it. Um, but I'm learning from it and I'm meeting
And
wonderful
you're
people.
starting a
A
movement.
movement. I guess
Let's
so.
do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
People, let's get some videos out. Just give her the credit on it and let's get those out and let's continue to just push this forward and let's start that movement. Christina, thank you so much today. I wish
Thank
I
you
could
so
just spend
much,
another
Martin.
hour with you. So many rich things that came out of this chat
I
today. I
really
really
appreciate
appreciate it.
it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my
My
story.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for being so candid with it too. It just helps us all to get better. All right,
Hopefully, I'll be okay.
everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the chats. Yes, she is so wonderful and generous, no doubt. All right, Christina, I will send you the replay of this. Thank you,
Thank
everybody, and
you.
we'll see
Thank
you guys
you.
tomorrow. Okay,
All right. Bye
bye.
bye.